It is a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight on this occasion of Alive at 25. And you know, we are alive at 25, we're alive at 35, we're alive at 45, 55, 65, 75, and on up in this state because what we're doing in highway and traffic safety. And these kids are dying way too often in South Carolina because they make bad choices. And what we've got to do is to allow them through this program to make good choices about how to drive, how to deal with peer pressure, how not to drink alcohol and get behind the wheel of an automobile, and how to be responsible individuals. That's what Alive at 25 is all about. It's about good choices. I am very proud to be a sponsor of this program statewide. A lot of people came to me and said, why in the world is the Lexington County Sheriff's Department sponsoring a program Alive at 25 throughout the state of South Carolina? And I said, because nobody else wanted it. That's not true. We wanted it. We believe in it, and we know what it can do for young people. And we know a proven fact that it can save lives. It has already, I believe, saved many lives, and we know it's going to save many more lives throughout the state of South Carolina, and especially in Lexington County. In a recent study by the Colorado State Patrol, 93% of participants in the Alive at 25 program reported that they will change their driving behavior as a result of completing the course. 93% is going to change their driving behavior because they completed this course. That's in Colorado. Think what it's going to be in South Carolina. I think it'll be better than 93%. But if we can get 93%, look what we're doing. We're moving forward. I had a lot I wanted to talk about tonight, but you know this young lady, Brooke Russell, when she got up here, she said about everything I was going to say. So I'm having to look over my notes and kind of move through real fast because she told you that there was 2,700 high school students that have already been through this program. She told you that. I think that deserves a round of applause again. She also told you that all students that have parking passes to park on the school grounds in Lexington District 1 are mandated to go through this program. She told you about White Knoll High School and what they've done in regard to the Alive at 25 program. This program is going to be offered to Chapin High School, Dutch Fork High School, Irmo High School, all in District 5 of Richland, Lexington County. In addition, the Alive at 25 program is offered to young adults who participate in the alcohol education program, again, out of the judicial circuits, I think about 12 or 13 out of 16 judicial circuits. And knowing Brooke Russell and Alive at 25 program, it won't be long before we'll be saying 16 out of 16. Right, Brooke?
Absolutely.
Unlike traditional driver education classes that focus on the mechanics of driving, Alive at 25 addresses drivers' behavior. It helps them make good decisions, drivers' behavior. It also allows them to overcome peer pressure. Peer pressure. I think we all understand what peer pressure does to us, even as adults. But just imagine as young, impressionable children, what their peers have to do with them behind the wheel of an automobile when they pick at them about speeding or let's have another beer or whatever the situation might be. They're going to do it more often than not because their peer pressure is going to cause them to do it. In the past decade, Alive at 25 has been effective in other states in reducing the number of teenagers who are killed in vehicle crashes. Young drivers are nearly twice as likely as other drivers to be involved in fatal vehicle crashes. That's an alarming statistic, isn't it, Mr. Ray? When you think of that number of young people who are likely to be involved in vehicle crashes. Each year, nearly 6,000 teenagers are killed in vehicle crashes, which are the leading cause of death for teenagers in the United States. Over 6,000, the leading cause of death for teenagers in the United States. Isn't that alarming, Herman? Very alarming. If we don't do anything more than to reduce one in South Carolina, as Brooks said a few minutes ago, that is a tremendous success in and of itself. The most common mistakes in fatal vehicle crashes that involve teenage drivers are driving in excess of posted speed limits and driving at unsafe speed, and also using alcohol. When you take speed and alcohol and put it together, it equals catastrophe. And that's what so many of our young people are doing. We need to remember that teenagers are learning about life as well as driving in this program. And we need to help them learn how to be good drivers. And that's what the program's all about. Teach them how to be good drivers. Teenagers are expected to make safe driving decisions, manage passengers in their vehicle, and avoid traffic hazards all at the same time. These tasks can be overwhelming, even for experienced drivers. I know what it is sometimes when we take a trip, trying to manage the road and at the same time listen to my little granddaughter in the back of the car saying, "Granddaddy, have we arrived yet?" And many of you have been in that situation yourself, listening to them ask you questions. Have you arrived yet? Is this going on? What are we going to do when they get there? You know, parents have a tremendous responsibility in rearing their children. And a lot of parents, I don't think, realize what responsibility they have in rearing their children when it comes to a vehicle, a 2,000-pound missile or more. I might be outdated in my math there, Jim. But you know, that is a tremendous responsibility when you put a child on the road to drive an automobile. And I, one, believe that there ought to be rules and regulations set forth by the parents for those children to follow when they're driving those vehicles. I don't think they ought to be driving at night without an adult in the car, even though I know the law allows it. When do so many of our accidents occur? At night, late at night, when I think the children ought to be home, not out somewhere frolicking around or not paying responsibility as they should to their driving situation, drinking, whatever the situation might be. I think teenagers need to be required, even the law requires it, to wear seat belts. I think we ought to counsel them about that, don't you, Herman? Yes. We ought to tell them, put your seat belt on. I know, again, my little granddaughter, when I don't put my seat belt on, doesn't she, Carol? She'll remind us to buckle up, because sometimes I'm a little bit hesitant about doing that myself. I just don't think about it. And she'll say, "Granddaddy, put your seat belt on." So we ought to be telling our children to put their seat belt on. I also think that teenagers should be allowed to drive when they're not using cell phones. Think about that. Think about us. We drive with those cell phones, don't we? And we ought to tell our teenagers, and we ought to tell ourselves, let's don't be driving with cell phones, because that creates a problem. Or, you know, these days and times, Harold, they don't only talk on the phone, they use their thumbs to text on the telephones. I don't know what that's all about, you know, when they're down and they're doing this sort of thing. That's some kind of new language, I believe, Chief. I don't know what texting is all about, but I know the teenagers do it. Down there with their thumbs going all the time. And listening to music. You know, that's a problem too. We should not allow teenagers to listen to music while driving. These kind of distractions of cell phones and texts and music and all that sort of thing, it leads to vehicle crashes, doesn't it, Terry? Yes, sir. It leads to vehicle crashes. Parents should implement that contract with their children, and they ought to carry it out to the fullest extent, even if it means taking the driver's license away. And your parents are thinking, my goodness, I can't do that, because then I'll have to drive little Johnny and Mary to wherever they're going. A driver's license is a coveted thing, isn't it? But if we would simply take parental responsibility a little bit more serious and have those contracts, I think we would save lives in South Carolina. And one last thing that I want to mention that's already been mentioned many times tonight, but is worth mentioning again and again. Teenagers should not be allowed to drink alcohol under any circumstances, but especially when they get behind the wheel of an automobile. And you know what? Parents should not be allowed to give alcohol to children, their own children, even though the law allows it, or to other children who may be staying with their children. And why do you think that's the case? Because it doesn't teach them responsibility. In all probability, if we allow them the opportunity to have alcohol, it's going to end up in a fatal crash. We shouldn't drink alcohol, much less our children drinking alcohol. You know, it's not a rite to teenage passage, is it? But sometimes we want to think that it's a rite from being a teenager to an adult because they can drink alcohol. It's time to recognize underage drinking for what it is, a behavioral problem that poses short-term and long-term health risks for our youth. One of the biggest challenges we face in enforcing the law in South Carolina is convincing parents and other adults that the illegal consumption of alcoholic beverages by children cannot and should not be condoned. Cannot and should not be condoned. Parents, I believe you provide the single most important influence on your children by the way you act, by what you say, and what you do. It's not, as the old cliche goes, do as I say do. That's not the way we do it. We tell them to do what is right, and then we in turn should do what? What is right. And we shouldn't drink alcohol in front of our children and then expect them to do what? Not drink alcohol. Because they see Mama and Daddy doing it, they're going to do it themselves. Where does the alcohol come from? Out of Mama and Daddy's house, more often than not. Or an adult goes somewhere and buys the alcohol and transfers it to the children. Transfer it to the children. I know about the keg parties. You know about the keg parties, those of you who are involved in law enforcement. It hadn't been too long ago, Carol and I were asleep in the middle of the night. About 3 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang, and there was an individual standing on our front porch, mad as he could be, because my deputies were out there raiding a keg party, and his son had been caught by one of the deputies and written a ticket. That individual was livid. He wanted me to call the deputies and tell them to go do something else. Chris, leave the children alone. And he told me, he said, I'm going to get you for this. And he tried, but he wasn't successful in getting me. He took out an ad in the newspaper and did everything he could to discredit me because I made a decision that was right and kept the deputy involved in the case and wouldn't let it be reduced in any way, shape, and form for his son, because he was concerned about one thing. He was not concerned about the life of that child or the life of the children in the community. What he was concerned about is his son wasn't going to get his scholarship. Wasn't going to get his scholarship. Now, I submit to you, money is important. Money is important. When we think about a scholarship to go to college, going to be taken away because you're drinking and consuming alcohol, that's a big debt to pay, but it should be under situations like that. And we as parents ought to be responsible for our children, and we ought to be responsible for ourselves. Alive at 25 is a wonderful program. Alive at 25 is going to keep people alive beyond 25. We know that. We know it's been successful all over this country, and we know it's going to be successful in Lexington County, South Carolina, and we know it's going to be successful in Beaufort County, South Carolina. We know it's going to be successful in Winsboro, South Carolina. We know it's going to be successful all over this community. Why? Because we're going to be involved. You're going to be involved. And our sponsors is what's made this program what it is. It's what's made this banquet available for us tonight. We can't say enough gratitude to you. We can't say enough thank yous to you for what you've done. And to a fellow like Harold Ray. Harold Ray is just a very incredible individual because he believes in Live at 25. He believes it, he breathes it, he speaks it, and he pulls his pocketbook out and says, here's what you need. If you need a car, I'll give it to you. And he did. Whatever you need, I'll give to you because I believe in the program Alive at 25. And there's Colors by Kiesler. Whispered to me tonight, how many more trailers do you need like the one out front in this facility here? How many more do you need? You got 5 school districts in the county. You need 5 more trailers? I'm going to make it happen, didn't you? I'm going to make it happen. And that's why the program is successful, because we've got so many people throughout this county and throughout this state that's saying, let me be involved. I'll help you make it happen because I want our kids to be alive at 25. Y'all agree with that? Yeah. Thank you very much.